Hi guys, welcome to Robin Hood Diaries tonight. Glad you could join me. This show is kind of completely off the top of my head, except for whatever not whatever I know what I put in the preview, which I basically said Schwabs. My dad used to call it Schwabs, and Pat Collins, the hypnotist, who was beyond the rage. So I thought the best way to do this would be literally to take you a stroll down the strip during, I don't know, you guys, the 70s. That's when basically I grew up. But Hollywood at the time was a different kind of Hollywood in the 70s. A lot of things, a lot of exciting stuff was going on, but a lot of degradation of the city was like at its critical mass. I mean, when I grew up, the Hollywood sign was like 3 letters, you know? So, Doheny is where what is now known as West Hollywood, which was an unincorporated area of Los Angeles County. So think of it like LA City, but not kind of sort of really. That's what West Hollywood was, an extension of Hollywood essentially. And then there was Doheny, which was a clear dividing line between Beverly Hills and West Hollywood, what is now West Hollywood. So let's start from there all the way up to the Strip. So you get Doheny all the way to where the Sunset Strip starts, the nice part, which I'm going to take you through. And then let's start at Doheny. We'll go all the way down, make our way, and then end up at Schwabs, where I grew up, literally. I mean, if you count the days and hours, you know, it's like sleep, that portion of your life. So we'll end there. That's Crescent Heights. So the Strip is essentially Doheny to Crescent Heights to the east. Once you get past Crescent Heights, well, we will not go there. And what it became, I don't know what it is now, probably whatever. So at Doheny, at the very beginning, again, 70s, mid to late 70s. Well, no, the Schwabs goes back to forever 70s, early. So at Doheny and Sunset is this place called it was her club, Pat Collins, the hypnotist. Now, she was completely all the rage at the time. She had history. She had performed, you know, the country, but she had her own club called, Pat Collins, the hypnotist, right there at Sunset and Doheny. There was merch. She had like glasses, and it was the big eyelashes with the lips, because she kind of looked like a drag queen. Big kind of bouffant kind of hair, heavy eye makeup, and kind of deep voice, and just commanding presence. And it was a big thing to even be able to get in to see her. It was a hypnotist show, you know, I'm sure you can imagine. Okay, so I get in there one night with my cousin Valerie and her friends, because I'm always running with older people when I was younger. And, you know, my best friend when I was like 11 was like 16, so whatever. So we get in the show. It's not a supper club. I mean, you are there to see somebody, you know, like a comedy club type scenario. Old club, God knows what it was before her. And, oh, that merch, I had the glass. It's like a beer glass. So we get in. So the deal is that you have to be part of the show. She randomly picks, I don't know, like 8 people or something to be in the show. And I was picked as one of the 8 people. Now, I'm like 12, okay? Precocious. We all know that euphemism by now. And so I'm picked to go up on the stage with these like 5 or 6 other adults to be the show. That is the show, is her hypnotizing us and doing her pizzazz and the Pat Collins show. And she even had records. Who listens to a hypnotist record? Anyway, so big show. And then, okay, so I'm not really hypnotized, you guys. You know, I've been through hypnosis. I was not hypnotized. This is way too distracting for my, read the book. She gets to the point where, you know, they hold the flame under your arm. like literally, they hold a lighter under your arm, and your arm's supposed to be flame, like not flammable or whatever. And we're all holding out our arm. Well, not really being hypnotized, I was not really fond of the idea of my arm being burned. And she was coming down with that friggin' cigarette lighter. So I literally went like this with my arm. So that kind of threw the show off a little bit. If I'm hypnotized, why am I avoiding the cigarette lighter? And then she has me do all this stuff like on stage with others. And then finally I'm off stage. She tells me I'm a spy that's trying to hide. And so I just sort of like scamper around the friggin' restaurant and then end up at my table. And the big bonus at that show was that Pat would give you a free self hypnosis thing, stop by like smoking. And backstage, like it was dark and it was behind a curtain. And so we go backstage and, I sit down and she's like, what? And I said, well, I bite my fingernail. So she's like, I mean, I don't, she kind of like had the like bedside manner of like the lady that, no offense, but that like does, your wash and fold. So, so I still, of course, kept biting my nails frantically after that. Anyway, so you go down from Doheny, then to your left is Gazari's Hardcore Rock and Roll. You can Google that. To your right is Scandia, a very, very, very famous high-end restaurant. Then you continue, you have the Roxy. I've seen everybody there in the 70s that you can imagine. And then you are getting to the Whiskey A Go-Go. Again, been there, done it with the whiskey going way back. So that is to your left. So now you're going down further. And as you go further down, you come to a split. And that is kind of like sort of the heart of the strip is that split. And at that split, first of all, to the right is a theater that I told you I did like a very successful run as a member of La Mama Playhouse. We had to move to that theater, really ramshackle kind of theater. Well, Sunset was that way. So that would have been to your right next to a head shop, which is the equivalent of a smoke shop, which blew up after that show. That play was over, long story. So then to your left is Tower Records. Now, you guys, no one, I don't think, will ever know what the vibe was at Tower Records in the 70s. I just don't think that is like capturable, that vibe. Throughout the 70s, from my first album I ever bought to until it wasn't Tower Records anymore, and literally was not Tower Records anymore. But during the 70s, Tower Records is, I like, again, like sleep, like you spend like whatever percentage of your life. It was a Tower Records. I mean, like, you waited. When the new album came out, they literally they took stacks and stacks of the LPs out, put them at the front door, you could barely open the door. And people would just literally, they'd be gone. People would just blip, 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 blip. 45, they had a 45 section. There were no cassettes, but then the cassettes were a big deal because it was this little island. Ooh, we have cassettes. Look at this new thing, cassettes. You guys, am I ancient or what? CDs were like, we all assumed CDs would never get the music that we wanted. It was like a new thing. You guys, I'm so old. It was to us like kind of like Laserdisc, like after Laserdisc. It was kind of like, yeah, CDs are cool, but they'll never have yada yada yada, which is some amazing LP on a CD. Well, now we're here. And CDs are ancient, and DVDs are ancient, and anything. So that was Tower Records. Tower Records, I had an apartment above Tower Records when I met my husband. You had to go in and literally wait sometimes for 20 minutes for a space to open up in a line, like coming out on Sunset Boulevard. Across from that, at the intersection, at the T of the split, is the Good Earth. It was like, oh my God, everything in the 70s was health food, and then fancy health food, and everything health food. That was hugely popular with celebrities right there at that split. So then you go to the left, you're cruising along, you hit Sunset Plaza. Sunset Plaza was back in my day when I was a little kid, it was Ciro's. It was these, Macambo style old nightclubs that were still there. Cafes, like even Myra Breckenridge was shot, the whole beginning was shot right there on Sunset Plaza. No one would know. Again, the 70s, everything was a little more run down than it ever was. So you pass Sunset Plaza, you go along, you're going along, and so to your left is Carney's. Carney's was huge in the 70s. They took this train and moved it into on Sunset Boulevard and turned it into a burger joint. And they had another one, I think somewhere. It was massively popular. Oh my God, Carney's hamburgers and hot dogs. No, you guys don't realize. And I mean, Carney's was just everything right there. So then across that, you got Mondrian Hotel, which used to be this run-down apartment building. My dad's theatrical agent had an office in the lobby, whatever. So then you're cruising down, and then you get to the Body Shop, which is that exotic dancer establishment that's been there forever. You see the sign of the moving silhouette nude ladies. And to your left is Chateau Marmont. And so now you're getting to Schwabs, and Googie's, which I mentioned was Jimmy Dean's favorite coffee shop. So you're heading now there, Sunset. Now you're at Crescent Heights. You're on the edge before it moves through a little bit nicer where I grew up, and then kind of into the Sunset, not Strip part. Anything that goes by tourists. Well, anyway. So on your right, as you're hitting Schwabs, was what used to be the Garden of Allah. The Garden of Allah was, you just have to Google that. It's immensely famous. It goes back to Errol Flynn and, Silent Age, and through, movie stars having apartments there and whatever. And that was very run down. So you hit Schwabs. Schwabs used to be literally a pharmacy. That's why it was called Schwabs Pharmacy. And it was just like a tuck going in, sort of like a nice storefront soda fountain with a pharmacy at the back. Well, long story short, that got whatevered, and it turned, you can see in my picture preview, or please Google Schwabs in Hollywood, Los Angeles, whatever. It is the swirliest, coolest, 60s skankorama, architecture you can imagine from the outside. So my dad, this place was chock-a-block with struggling actors and famous actors and actors of every variety, and some industry folks all scattered in there, writers and whatever. I lived there. Whenever I was with my dad, it was obligatory. I mean, it was mandatory that we hit Schwabs for hours. Oh, Sean, there's Sidney Sikorski. He was a famous columnist, and I met Elvis at Schwab's, and I was at Schwab's with Cass Elliot and my dad, where we couldn't quite fit comfortably into the booth with Cass, so we actually went, I think, to the Source, which again, another health food restaurant, but hugely popular. So I could tell you what every inch of every light fixture in Schwab's, every lava rock that was over the soda fountain on the other side, imagine black lava rocks and this 1960s swirly soda fountain. So every waitress is ingrained in my head. One had this bright orange red hair, and my dad knew all of them. My dad, being the cheapskate he was, and needing to talk to these actors and writers for hours. I mean, I was expected to literally sit there and listen to these struggling and B-list and C-list and A-list sometimes people for hours, watching my dad nurse the same refill for hours. Okay, if I was lucky, I could get what was called a pancake sandwich, but it was their specialty. You know, it had like a little like Chinese pan stand picture next to the pancake. Anyway, no, there were no pictures on those menus. And then there was the pharmacy, which just started. That's where I met Elvis. I met him at the pharmacy section. And that was it. I mean, famous people. I met, you know, Walter Pidgeon there. May not know who that is, famous old actor. Alfie's Flowers was the place to get flowers. Dump. I mean, not dump. I'm sorry, guys, but I knew that couple very, very well growing up. So that's, you know, kind of where you're ending. Crescent Heights there. Yes, gentlemen, Numbers was still there. Was there at the time. Inside thing. So you've hit Crescent Heights. So you're looking back around, and what you're seeing is Laurel Canyon shooting up the mountain to go into the valley, and what you're looking down at is kind of the beginnings of West Hollywood as we know it today, and thereabouts, and thereof, and those folks, and us folks, and everybody. And I grew up like right there, you know, nearby Fairfax and Sunset, forever, like 3 different houses in that area alone. So anyway, it's my old stomping ground. But anyway, that's it for this evening. I'm sure I went way too long with my little Sunset Boulevard drive here, but I imagine it like, you know, you're on YouTube and you see those, you know, this is like colorized what it looked like for 2 hours driving down Wilshire Boulevard or whatever. Well, hopefully there was sort of a guided imagery. Okay, I'll let you go. Thank you as always, 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 always for sharing this time with me, being with me, making my day, and putting up with me. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.